Welcome to the Whissel Way podcast today. This is going to be a fun one. I got a good buddy of mine, also a business partner of mine, Blake Comfort Communities, and Comfort Capital, which are two companies now technically, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's going to be fun today. We're going to dive in. Blake has a really unique niche in the real estate space focused on mobile home parks, which is one of those, it's like not the sexiest thing on the surface, but when you get below the surface and you really understand what's going on, it's one of the most sexy asset classes in all of real estate. So Blake, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, brother.
So I had an opportunity to be on your podcast a couple months ago. Now you get to be on our podcast. So I'm excited to kind of share with our audience. Audience is mostly people in the real estate space, a lot of realtors, a lot of lenders. And so everybody is very used to the traditional real estate, selling homes, maybe selling a little bit of commercial property here and there. But this mobile home park niche that you guys are focused in, let's talk a little bit about how did we come upon this?
Yeah. So long story short, my dad was a blue collar contractor, general contractor, built for the most part in his 35-year career, multifamily apartments. So we made a lot of cool connections through that. But he was one of those blue collar contractors that like woke up in his late 50s and is like, what do I do to get out of the rat race? And
the body at that age doesn't work as well as it used to,
and
right?
then stress was catching up with him, and you're basically working your butt off to land jobs, working hard, being stressed to run a schedule, a budget, all that, to then end up with getting a payday. But then you got to keep your crew and your all of your employees happy and on board, and you have to basically launch and continue a pipeline of deals, or else you don't end up with any money at the end.
Yeah.
And so 2006 to 2008, the GFC started kicking in. Luckily, he was kind of cluing in early. We started reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and the likes, probably the top 10 of those, Think and Grow Rich, and then you kind of go down the list. And I was a very rebellious student. I wasn't a rebellious kid necessarily, totally. I wasn't into drugs and anything crazy, but I just didn't want to go to college.
Okay.
And so in my later high school years, I've got hooked by Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then we started going into seminars. I was missing senior year high school because I was basically cruising through the finish of it,
Yeah.
And we went to a bunch of awesome 3 to 4 day seminars where they highlighted a bunch of real estate options.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking back to the impetus, because it's like you try to go from what should you do as a job and earning a W-2 or just having a normal income, and to how do you get to cash flow. And so that was what this was focused on. And from that side, they touched on commercial, retail, industrial, fix and flip, residential rentals, and then multi, and then a quick little segment of multi and self-storage and mobile home parks.
Right.
And my dad and I look at each other like, well, we want to listen more. We just kind of both had a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Because also San Diego multi at that time, and we were still thinking really small at that moment, was still expensive. Cap rates were tight. Multi has traditionally been extremely competitive. Probably, and there's at least 10 to 15 to 1 apartment buildings to every mobile home park.
Okay.
And so then you end up with that much more of a bidding process and a chess match with other, let's say, sophisticated buyers.
Definitely.
For every multifamily project. We didn't know that to the extent, but we knew that it was going to be at least several $1 million to buy a 20, 30 unit in San Diego.
Yeah.
So the mobile home parks was 30 unit. We start kind of looking. At that time, you could still get them for 10 to 30,000 a unit.
Yeah.
So our first 28 space deal was 620,000.
That's crazy.
And it was outside of Denver, so major market, but not in our backyard. And so that was the moment where it clicked. Was okay. Also, you don't have to have a manager live there, where there's kind of less rules and laws around it, but just because it's not that big of an industry. Right. So if you wanted more units, we had learned that the more units, the better. If you have 20 or 30 plus, one unit going down or having an issue turning over, you name it, it's a smaller swing on your income.
Right.
So we were really trying to get above 25 units.
Okay.
And so we really knew nothing, but that course gave us enough confidence. We then bought one of their programs specific to that. And it, in hindsight, was actually pretty good quality.
Yeah.
This is 2008, 2007, 2008.
I mean, most of these courses are actually good. The problem is people just don't do anything with it. Like there's so many of these courses around like fixing and flipping, and everybody like takes the course and then they actually go and like tie a property up and then they panic. They're like, oh shit, what do I do? And then they like, what's the natural thing to do? Call the person who created the course. I got this property tied up. What do I do? And then they sell it off to that person or JV with them. Like, but most people do nothing. And then even if they do, they give up the freaking project. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, like the Pace Morby kind of thing where they flip it up.
Oh my gosh, the amount of deals he gets
from the crew.
People he teaches how to do it, but are too scared to do it on their own. So they just give it to him. It's like, oh,
and you pay him a little referral fee or something, a finder's fee. So, I mean, in the end, that's it. Take the course and go, and then the action becomes absolutely critical.
Yeah.
We tied up probably 5 deals before we landed one, which means we made offers, actually won, made an LOI deal, handshake, go out there, look at them, and then we got spooked for several reasons. Early on, we were all over the country, and we learned that we kind of had to stay in some market, like, so we drew a line across like Colorado West, and we said we're going to stick to the West, because when you get to the East, you don't have like the same systems, basically. I'll just say that. You got sewer treatment plants, and you have water systems, and it's just very different. The landscape's different. The vendors, structure, like everything just gets a little different.
And weather just gets a little different. Weather,
challenges, mold, you name it. To where we just got like, I'll never forget, there was a sewer treatment plant, and it looked like shit. Yeah. And the guys are, it doesn't look like it, but you could drink that water. Let's you are so not. Full of it. So we literally went through all that. We didn't go through them. Our first deal we landed was just north of Denver.
Okay. And so that first one was what you said, 28 units? And then now you guys are up to like, I think 2,300 units, if I remember correctly. So how did you guys scale? Because that's something everybody wants to learn about, whether they're doing traditional residential real estate or, apartments or, mobile home parks. How did you guys scale from like 28 to where you guys are today?
So, I will say there's no get rich quick scheme. Like I've been doing this since I was 18, so I've been doing it for pushing 16 years.
Let's just stop right. You did start this while you were in high school, not college, like high school. That's crazy.
And there was a couple years worth of learning before we actually bought one.
Yeah.
I was 19 when we closed on the first one, and so call it 17 to 19, roughly a year and a half or whatever. And in the first one, we didn't have any money, so like we literally tied it up on a credit card. I'll never forget. We sent the earnest deposit through Visa.
Those ones were like cash advanced via a check.
You know what? To this day, my dad did something.
They used to do that. I don't know if they still do, but like they would with your statement, there would be like a check, and you could just sign the check and use it like a normal check, and it would just be a cash advance. And they usually tie some sort of like, oh, no payments for 6 months if you use this, or some crazy stuff like that.
Yeah, we borrowed the money from my grandma to buy the course right before the earnest money deposit.
Okay.
And Dad and and at that moment, my sister was off at college, so she's not in the story yet, but she a couple years later gets in. And so Dad and I were fully committed, and I feel like he was sort of keeping me running because he's like stressed but like believes in it so much. So like he did a few things like that to where he almost like hid that from me in that moment, that like we didn't have any money, so he was funding it through his credit card. So it was so those were those all-in moments, and so we tie up that deal. Anyways, we raised the equity. It was a couple $100,000. We ended up going back, not doing a capital call, but just realizing that we needed like another 100 in order to execute on the fix up and the value add piece.
Okay.
So we raised a total of $300K and then held it, played the game. It was on a private well, had city sewer, but the private well was tricky. I went to school on that thing, basically. And we had to sue the city. The city didn't want us to put any newer manufactured homes back in spaces that had dilapidated trailers. So we, like everything you kind of hear about, we hit right on the gate, right out the gate. And so then you scale. We bought another deal and just consistently we're looking. I can't tell you how many mobile home parks I've looked at. So that's like what people talk about now is like the dark work you do, the work that nobody realizes. Like me and Dad were completely mobile home park nerds until like 10 p.m. every night at the computers. He had a home office. I was still living at home, obviously. And him and I would sit next to each other at the 2 desk spots, and we'd just be like talking deals. You see this one? Oh, you see that one? And we'd pull it. And he was so funny in hindsight. He would pull this like sheet on LoopNet. It was all LoopNet back then.
Yep.
And you
spent quite a bit of time on LoopNet over the years.
So there's a few things that are normally like linked and you can download like a P&L or whatever.
Yeah.
He would compile files and files of these things, and then I would be calling the brokers or whoever, the owner, if it was that. Some of them back then were for sale by owner because they were smaller. We just looked at everything, made an offer on everything we could make any type of sense on, and bought one deal after another the slow way. I mean, went from that 28 unit to a 37 to a 69 unit up in the mountains in Arizona. That was our first Arizona property. Second deal was in Durango, Colorado, which is a kind of a fun submarket. Yeah. And then we started into Arizona. And once we got into Arizona, we just loved it so much more than we had like freezing pipes, with Colorado. Yeah. You have those temps and snow, and I'll never forget like certain challenges with that. Operationally, that was more challenging. So Arizona just opened up this whole playing field. Okay. And it was competitive then, but it wasn't like it is now. Yeah. And with mobile home parks, even specifically for listeners, like they are now very popular, and all the multifamily guys that are still in business are now looking to push into mobile home parks.
What are they going to find when they get into mobile home parks that they weren't expecting?
It's not easy to operate. Yeah. It's not hard, but it's not easier. Okay. It has its own challenges that you have to sharpen all of your management team.
Just imagine the tenant base in a mobile home park, whether it's a 55 plus park or an all ages park. It's just a different demographic that you have in a park versus houses or Class A multifamily properties.
Well, Class A, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more like operating like Class C or Class B apartments.
Like Section 8 type stuff.
But to be fair to the residents, like this isn't very little, if any, is government subsidized. Yeah. So you're dealing with, I'd say, better than Section 8. Okay. Because there's no entitlement. Like they're pretty proud people. Yeah. Even in family parks or seniors, like there's this element of pride of ownership, which is a big shift from apartments. They kind of trash them and do whatever they want because it's not theirs, and there's hardly any repercussions in Class C or Class B. Yeah. Whereas they own the home, so they should at least have a little bit of respect.
So when people buy multifamily, they usually come in and they renovate everything inside, outside, new roofs, new grounds, new amenities, stuff like that. When you guys come into a mobile home park, what do you guys do to add value? Because there's not a building. Well, maybe there might be a building for a rec room or something like that. But what do you guys typically do to like raise the value of a park once you take it over?
So we call them touch point. Every touch point we can impact, entry, signage, landscaping, hit you first. So we kind of go out of our way to make the approach nice. And then inside, streets, curbs if we can, or we fix whatever's there, make it just kind of celebrate whatever can be done there. Yeah. Clubhouse, Jen and we have a gal now that's crushing it on the rehab of the clubhouses. Okay. I'd say we're going over and above there too, because it's all we got is the entry. I'd say the cleanliness of the community, enforcing rules, the clubhouse being super cute for parties, birthdays, you name it. It's available and nice to where it's inviting and people want to be there, which is like nobody does that.
Yeah, sure.
Like
usually the rec room is just like an afterthought for most people.
And it's so gross and old and dim, and like the furniture's from the 80s, and it's
plastic chairs and everything.
Those weird pool chairs, like from all the movies. Yeah. So all that is freshened up and clean, and like we're just launching like all of our new photos because we just did 9 this last year, 9 clubhouses, and they're epic compared to what they were. Yeah. And it's not like we spent like maybe $200,000 on the whole deal. Yeah. Including new signage and then that fluff up. Okay. But we spend, it's good quality, but the stuff you can get now online and ship it in, but it looks really nice.
The signage wise, one of the parks I'm invested in with you guys, the one in Yuma, Westward Village.
Yeah.
It's got the guy there with like the shotgun. Like that is the
We
coolest
painted
stuff.
him. We painted him, made him look nice.
Refresh.
He looked sharp. His nose was starting to fall off.
That
when
one's
we
so
got him.
amazing. We'll have to. I'll share a picture of that one, but that one's hilarious.
It's
just
like a Yuma landmark.
cowboy with a shotgun at the front entrance
The sheriff.
of the park. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
When we go to Hidden Shores, I take Addie by there here and there, and I show, look at, we own that sheriff.
This is ours.
Whatever.
That's cool. And then you guys do some unique stuff with the units too, where you bring like, you take the old dilapidated ones, replace them. Like, what's the strategy on that kind of stuff?
So we became, little by little, as we transacted more and more homes, we became aware that if we transacted like between 5 and 10 homes, basically anything over 5 or 7, you have to become licensed. So 10 years ago, I got my license to be a manufactured home dealer.
Yeah.
It also allowed us to cut out the middleman, and it's a really old it's just an old school world. These dealers on the corner that sell manufactured homes,
Yeah.
they want their cut of flesh, and they want their 20%, 30% markup. So we did it a couple of times where we floored a couple of new homes through dealers.
Yeah.
And it just felt like we were getting taken advantage of.
Right.
And meanwhile, we're trying to just end up with a nice, affordable product that's good quality, but that we can execute on. So anyways, we got our dealer's license, which opened our eyes, because now we have like a full different execution segment of the business, where I have a line of credit as a functioning dealer, so I can floor homes in all the communities as different locations. And they're essentially our dealer lots, but I don't have to have like a retail center.
When you say floor, what does that mean?
It's like a car lot. You floor inventory.
Okay.
And so like when you go to a car dealer, you have all this inventory, that's flooring.
Okay.
And they don't buy them. Like they're out there as floored inventory, and they have a credit arrangement with the manufacturer.
Okay.
Or a third party lender.
Okay.
And so we have a line of credit that allows us to pull from any of the main manufacturers that are available in each location, and we'll floor those depending on the seniors, like whoever's the demographic we're selling to. We like different products, but we'll put those homes in the parks that we're operating, and it's all integrated vertically. And then we played with several different versions, but now we're so focused on the real estate game of space rent and maximizing the revenue for the real estate partnership, that we actively sell homes at break even or even a little bit of a loss. And so industry wide, that's become, as I've become friends with like 10, 20,000 space operators that are higher level, people that we look up to. They're like, no, you just subsidize it a little bit. Like, break even, pay your sales team enough to transact it, and a commission, or realtors. We use realtors that are specialized in manufactured home sales too. And just depending on the market, honestly. And that way the home is affordable and the home price is as cheap as it can be. Right. Because the chattel lending is expensive. So it's 8-10+%. And it's 10, 15, 20-year ammo, depending on your credit as well. So we want to basically do anything we can to keep that payment down on the home. Therefore, we have market rate space rent, because that's the cap rate. That's the value. Yeah. So it's like one of those where it's like short-term loss, long-term gain. Like, who cares about making 10 grand off the home? Because if you can get an extra $1 of rent, right? Like, what does that do? What if it's $100 rent? What if it's an extra $1,000 of rent? It's 100 too. If you save that money on the home sale. Yeah. Like what we found in apartments, the stuff we're building here in San Diego, it's like roughly $150 to $180 of value per dollar of monthly rent. So it's like, if I can get extra $1,000 of monthly rent, like that's $150 to $180,000 of value. Yes. Right. So like that adds up really quick. So it's like, let's get that 1,000, and who cares about making 10,000, on the unit, like $1,000 a month in rent, 150,000 in value. Like, let's talk about the big picture as opposed to like this small little $10,000 one-time gain. It's 100%. That's a smart strategy. And then once they move in, they're in this new home, like they're kind of locked in to a certain extent, right? Well, and so the whole, I'd say our version of the challenge with like rehab and cost is the set crews are these good old boys. and they demand what they demand, and it's 20, 30 grand to set a house with nice quality stairs. You got to pour the new concrete. Typically, it doesn't work with the new versus the old home that we pulled. Okay. So you got to scrape that pad, pour new concrete, do a new awning. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to be in that much money. We'll put that on top of the retail, or I should say the wholesale price that we pay from the manufacturer for the home, and we'll come up with a number that's basically break even minus a few bucks.
Okay.
And so we've done... At one point, we were doing like 100 homes a year. We did those. We sold those deals off. Yeah. We learned our lesson on some of those in that we went through COVID with them. Yeah. And so everything was just really expensive. Okay. And so we sold those, and now we're really focusing. We did good on them. We made money. It was like 11% AARs on those. Yeah. But we went down the road, and now we've honed our focus. Some of them they had private sewer on one of them. Electrical is a huge ticket item for us. Okay. You can get into the weeds real quick with electrical, and it'll cost you $1 million to go in and rehab. Basically, these old parks were built in the 70s and 80s, so there's very antiquated systems, and you have to size that correctly.
And you got people running like 40 amp breakers and these like
with new homes and 3 window units, and they're going off, and they have them like wired direct, and you name it, fire hazard central.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah.
Okay. And so then you guys lock these parks up, and then you guys are doing syndications traditionally. So just break down the basics of like a syndication.
Yep. So syndicators raise money, raise equity with investors. They follow a particular structure. We do LLCs. Every deal we buy is a separate LLC. We raise all the equity for that specific one deal into that fresh LLC. Okay. So you're investing and buying your pro rata share of that deal and of that entity, which is one and the same, but just to be clear. Okay. And then we pool that money in that new LLC account, and then that from there deploys the capital to purchase the deal. Okay. I am the managing member of that LLC so that I can be basically on the hook for the loan. We get commercial loans. They're non-recourse, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, CMBS. We've done bank loans, but we're really going clear into non-recourse only. Okay. Like if the deal doesn't qualify anymore for agency loan, I probably won't buy it. Okay. It just is below that tier of risk.
Yeah, got it. So you pool the money together, and so all these investors, what's in it for them?
So it's 80%. So all the cash comes in. We sell off 80% of the deal. We retain 20% of the ownership. Okay. And so that it's basically a very simple 80-20. There's no pref. Okay. Cash flow is shared pro rata, the 80-20. But then we call it now kind of a quasi-pref on the sale. Okay. Because on the sale, we haven't, and the cash flow you're receiving, we haven't been paying you down. Right. So let's say you put in $100,000. Your $100K buys you your percentage interest, and we're not paying you your $100 back with the cash flow. Right. It's just you own your piece, and then when we sell, the capital goes to make the investors whole first. Okay. So you get your $100K back in the calculation. We then take a 20% promote and then split 80-20.
Okay. And so if somebody wants to invest, they have to be accredited on these?
They do.
They do have to be accredited. Okay. And so what's accreditation, just in case somebody's not familiar?
So it's $250K a year or more, or I think with your spouse, and $1 million net worth. And then I think now you can take a test. That's like a new thing. Oh, really? To be accredited. Yeah,
Ooh,
that's real time. That's last year or so. Yeah. You can take a test.
Just to like prove financial literacy?
Yeah.
Because that's the idea, right? Yeah. Behind the accreditation is they want to make sure that a savvy person like you is not taking advantage of somebody who is far less savvy. So they somebody someday determine, like, if you make $250 a year, you have $1 million net worth, excluding your house, like, you're savvy. Yep. So therefore it's cool. But that's to protect the people that are less savvy. But now if they make a test to prove like your savviness, that's interesting. I actually have not looked into that.
We should check it out. Yeah. I just been hearing about it. Yeah. But I think that there is a format for that currently. And then you can direct your people through an app and they can verify. Okay. And so yeah, it seems cool. We focus, in San Diego, if you're putting in 100, 250K in deals and or regularly, and we're really trying to align with people that don't want to have, let's say, a whole portfolio of rentals, or they do, and now they're like 70, and they're like, you know what, to heck with this. Insurance is kicking my butt. Property taxes, the whole thing as you're planning for that legacy ownership, passing them down to kids. Then you look at like, I'm doing a lot of work for the return on equity.
Yeah.
So a lot of our clients are kind of grooming holdings and are substantially over $1 million. They're probably, I'd say our typical clients probably 5+ net worth and maybe on up to 50 to 100.
And people who are doing this, it's truly passive, right? I mean, they have no say. Even if they wanted to have a say, technically they don't, correct?
So so it's formatted to be a white glove. You don't have to worry about a single thing, not even the tax return. You just receive a K-1. So we operate all aspects of the front end of the legal structure, all of the insurance that we carry for the companies, for the operating company, for the property, the liability, you name it. So we cover all of it, and that's essentially what we're getting paid for, is we're running the entire operation. And then we'll work to do very strategic planning from the 1031 standpoint. Okay. So as we hold a deal, now I've been doing this, so I've had I think 10 or 12 deals go full cycle, meaning that we bought them, we held them for 10 years or less, 6, 7, 8 years, and we sold them, and then we did 1031s into new properties.
Okay.
We run that whole process. And so I carry the weight of that because I strategically look at like, okay, what deal do we actually want to buy with proceeds? Because you don't take a 2x, 3x on your money and dump it into something that's a turd.
Right.
You want to celebrate the win, but then go into something that has legs, but that also is going to provide stable cash flow on the earnings and the profits from the other deal.
Got it.
And then it has to be 1031, and so that nobody gets boot and taxed and all that stuff.
So when you guys, let's say you had 50 investors on a deal and you come out of one, and then do they have a choice if they want to ride with you on 1031? So they can either take their money and bounce and pay their taxes, or they could 1031 just roll into whatever the next deal is?
Correct. Okay. The best time we've learned is to basically go around and have conversations with everybody involved. And once it's closed, or near closing and it looks sure that it's going to close, because you don't want to go out early and then something happens with the deal and goes sideways, and now you got to go back to everybody and tell them it didn't sell. Yeah. So there's like this right moment, like call it a month or 2 weeks before it closes. Yeah. And then you can actually minimize your exchange. So there's a whole process there that the CPAs have guided us through. Okay. And you can close the deal, but have separate closing statements for the people that are exiting. Okay. And that reduces your thresholds.
Got it.
So that's the cleanest way to go about it.
Okay. Can somebody 1031 into a deal?
Yes. Okay. So I'd say an overview, that's one of the things I wanted to kick around with you, having that it's a big real estate professional agent landscape. Yeah. We are having a huge shift with the California insurance game being extremely tough. Yeah. And we live here, so we get it. We're in San Diego. Our insurance went up too. Yes. We do have one 200-unit apartment deal here that we get our butts kicked on insurance every year.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's crazy right now.
So we're becoming a 1031 TIC magnet. And it's not really been intentional off the bat. It's been more like, hey, I'm putting in this money, but I also have this that I want to sell for $1 million or net 500 or net 2 million. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't want to go into DSTs. Like, what should I do? Yeah. So we started just kind of guiding them, and then we're like, well, heck, let's figure this out. And so we've been doing it, and I'd say we're going to groom an entire process for this. Yeah. So for realtors listening, if you have sticky, people that own a bunch of rentals and they just don't know what to do with the money, we should start booking meetings with them, with our head of capital formation now, and we can start to kind of lay that out. And we're working with, I just got a phone on the way in with a IPX rep here that they specialize in exchange and reverse exchanges. Okay. Because we can actually plan a lot of it and structurally help to kind of create a really easy workflow through that.
Do you guys have a minimum on how much they have to have?
I'd say somebody coming in, if we don't know them and we don't know any of the backstory, at least $1 million. Okay. Probably leaning more towards 2. Yeah. But if it's somebody that's like, hey, I want to lay out, I have 50 rentals and there's more of a story there, obviously we'll have a bigger conversation. Yeah. But yeah, it costs money legally to do it. Yep. And so I'd say roughly $1 million.
Okay. So a traditional investment, 100's the minimum right now?
100K is min.
And then if we're doing a 1031, we're going to say somewhere in the 1 to 2 range.
Yep.
It kind of depends on the story and the investor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's you're sort of partnering with them.
Yeah.
And legally there's some running around.
It's a lot more complicated.
It's a lot more complicated.
You're not going to do it for a $200,000 check. It's not worth the headache.
It's honestly too expensive.
Yeah.
Legally. Yeah. But it's $7,500 to do a reverse, which is worse than a regular.
Right.
But basically, if I have like my exchange, we just sold a deal in Mesa, so I have the control on an exchange, and then I have like 4 more coming in right now. I am now making sure that all those are going to close, or that they have the ability to write the check to cover.
Okay.
And so there's a whole format we're building real time. It's getting fun though, because I think we're going to end up building a pretty cool kind of funnel for that type of money that really wants to be passive, but it's like, how do you get there? Yeah. And like I've talked to some of these DST guys who are really good at this, but the upside and the motivations and the alignment are a little bit funny in my opinion. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot to be covered there, but yeah.
Cool. Last thing I want to hit is tax mitigation. So there's some strategies around this. So talk about that.
So in real estate, we are blessed with depreciation from the IRS. And so the more that you can push from a cost segregation study, the more that you can push into a shorter life cycle, call it 15-year and under life cycle, the better, because it front loads all the depreciation that then offsets your income for that property. Yes. And or then your share of that property. And so mobile home parks, this is luck. We didn't actually know that it was this good when we got into the niche. But mobile home parks, you don't own the homes, so we don't own the structures above the ground. Right. And then the ones that we do, let's say because we bought a deal, has like 20 or 30 that came with it. Yeah. Well, it's a mobile home. It's a piece of personal property. It's actually 5-year. Yeah. So a mobile home park is, call it like, I'll just lay out 100 units, 10 acres of land roughly. We allocate everything we can to the underground infrastructure and plumbing for water sewer, the electrical infrastructure, and the clubhouse, streets, and basically detail everything out in a cost seg for all the mechanical functions of that property. Yeah. We don't own any of the structures other than maybe the clubhouse, which is typically a pretty small piece of the whole deal. Yeah. And so you end up with 80% of a purchase price. So in that, let's call it a 10 million 100 unit. $10 million, you end up with $8 million in under 15-year depreciation. So then depending on what the current bonus structure is or whatever, at the end of the day,
might be getting really good again.
We're really excited about the bullishness, let's say, of that, and Trump probably really liking that.
It was in his campaign that he was bringing back 100%.
Yep. So if that comes back, and we're back to 100, like depending on loan proceeds and interest rates and all that, we're going to be back 100+% on invested capital. So if you invest $100K in a deal, you'll get $110,000, $120,000 that same year in loss to offset your other holdings.
Yeah, and obviously talk to a tax professional, make sure that they understand this. It depends if you're real estate professional status, you're not, active, passive, like talk to your CPA. Let them advise you on that stuff. I'm not going to give you any tax advice on here.
I'm not a CPA.
Blake will give you a K1, and then what you do with it, that's between you and your CPA, exactly how you guys handle that. But you can, everybody can wipe out the passive gains, and it's a matter of, are you going to also wipe out active gains? That's a conversation for you and your CPA to figure that stuff out. So if you guys are watching this, like if you're interested in investing, you could do the normal thing, right? You could be active and you could go buy, fix and flips, buy and holds, build ADUs, all the stuff that's out there right now. Or if you just want to do something passive, like this is a great option. Or you have a client who's maybe coming out of an active type property where they're in it every day and dealing with tenants, toilets, trash, all the headaches, and they're coming out with a bunch of money in a 1031. This could be a really good option for them. So if you guys are watching, if you want to get connected with Blake, send me a DM on Instagram at Kyle Whissel. I'll get you connected. I'll make the introduction. I know they always have deals. I know you guys just had a new one in Dallas that's coming out right now. So they always have deal flow, which is great. So definitely send me a DM on that. And then before we wrap up the show, one of the things we love to do here is we call the Whissel Widget of the Week, something we utilize in our business. It saves us time, makes us more money, or helps us have a little bit more fun. So what do you got for us today?
I love it. So I was blown away. It's an app that Patrick Bet-David came out with called Manect. And I've been listening to him for like news stuff. And anyways, I tried it because I'm like, this sounds almost too good to be true. But long story short, you download the app, you create a profile, and you can actually pay, depending on their rate, depending on their popularity typically, to engage with that person directly. And then they'll typically send you a voice response. So I'm like, well, this is cool. So I sent Patrick Bet David a message and paid him $100. That's what it cost.
Okay.
And I asked him very specific questions. You have 1,000 words that you, or 1,000 whatever letters, characters. And I wrote a very specific kind of thing about what I wanted to do within marketing, and then some questions. And he responded with like a 3-minute voice message to me, specifically hitting my questions.
For $100.
For $100.
It's a no-brainer.
So for him, right?
Yeah.
And then like there's people like Graham Stephan and Paul Saladino, the health guy.
Yeah.
And you can, like, for $20, you can ask him a personal question.
That's cool.
And he'll respond. And if they don't, then you get your money back.
Okay. And it's Minect, spell it?
Minect. Yep. Like, do you have a minute to connect? Minect.
Okay, got it.
Minnect.
Okay, cool. The one I'll share today, we are in the process of understanding that when you pay for Google Workspace, you're paying for all of Google Workspace, but a lot of us only use the Gmail portion of it. And there's a lot of other things that are included with it. So one of the things that we're really focused on with the team right now is getting rid of all these services that we're double paying for. So we're working on transitioning off of Zoom onto Google Meet, because when you pay for Workspace, Google Meet's included. So why the hell are we paying for Zoom when we get Google Meet included? It's just these unnecessary expenses that we're doubling up on. But one of the other ones that a lot of people don't know about is inside of Google Calendar, they have a Calendly tool that works just like Calendly. So if you're not familiar with Calendly, it's something where you could say, hey, if you need to meet with me, just go here, and then it's synced up with your calendar, and somebody can book a 15-minute meeting, 30-minute meeting, whatever you want. They have that exact same thing inside of Google Calendar when you have Google Workspace, and it's just called Appointment Schedule. So open up your calendar, hit the little plus button for Create, and you'll see an option on there called Appointment Schedule. And then you can go in there and just set up whatever meeting it is. You could say, only allow people to book during these days, these times, add this much of a buffer. I want it to be an in-person meeting or a Google Meet meeting or whatever you want. And now when, instead of like going back and forth when somebody needs to schedule with you, you could just send them over that link and make it really easy for somebody to book and not waste any money on Calendly, because it's built into Google Workspace. So Appointment Schedule, that's what it's called. It doesn't have a fancy name. They probably should give it a name, but for now it's called Appointment Schedule. So hopefully that was helpful for you, and hopefully this show was helpful. Blake sharing a lot of knowledge. If you guys are looking to invest, again, send a DM over at Kyle Whissel. I will get you connected with Blake. And again, if you're watching the show, if you got some value today, hit the thumbs up button. If you're watching on YouTube, if you want more of this content, hit the subscribe button, the little notification bell. And then if you have a question, you could throw it in the comment section. I make sure to respond to those personally, so we'll make sure to get you a response as quick as we can. Also, if you're listening on a podcast platform, make sure to subscribe to the show. If you got 2 minutes, write a quick little review. Those reviews mean the world to us. It's really hard to get a damn review on a podcast platform. So if you can, even if you just give us 5 stars, that's cool too. But I'd love it if you write a couple sentences, maybe your biggest takeaway from today or one of the previous episodes of the show. With that said, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of the Whissel Way podcast. We'll see you next time.